Putting yourself in other people's shoes is big. It's kind of hard to remember that because you're getting information when you're a leader, usually from your leader, right? Your boss. They're telling you one thing. It's hard for them to see kind of 2 layers down how that's going to impact everyone else. So, I would always just try to put myself in other people's shoes. Okay, if I do this, how's that gonna make this person feel?
Welcome to the Long Blue Leadership Podcast, presented by the U.S. Air Force Academy Association and Foundation. These are powerful conversations with United States Air Force Academy graduates who have lived their lives with distinction. All leaders of character who candidly share their stories, including their best and worst moments, the challenges they've overcome, the people and events that have shaped who they are, and who willingly lend their wisdom to advance your leadership journey. Your host for this edition of Long Blue Leadership is Naviere Walkewicz, USAFA class of '99, currently serving the Association of Graduates as Senior Vice President of Alumni Relations and as a member of the AOG Board of Directors. And now, Naviere Walkewicz.
Our conversation for this episode of Long Blue Leadership is with Sam Eckholm, USAFA class of 2018, an Air Force captain turned full-time entrepreneur and storyteller. The third in his family's Long Blue line, Sam is the son of a 1989 graduate and the nephew of a 1993 grad, all three hailing from Cadet Squadron 28, the Blackbirds. We'll talk with Sam about his journey from his 2014 high school graduation in Dallas, Texas, to the day he stood on the footprints at the Academy, and the next 4 years following that. We'll ask about how he made his way from the wing to the F-22 Raptor demonstration team, then public affairs, out of the Air Force after that in 2023, and now an entrepreneur, content creator, and social media influencer with more than 1.5 million followers. Sam's father and uncle were his main sources of inspiration for becoming a member of the profession of arms. He has stayed close to the Air Force and the Academy ever since, leading hopefuls to reach for their dreams and sharing his passions for all things Air and Space Force with the world. As we move through the conversation, we'll talk about lessons he's learned being led, as a leader, and what advice he would give to those aspiring to become leaders and leaders who want to be better. And now, here's my conversation with Sam Eckholm. Welcome to Long Blue Leadership, and thank you for being here today.
Naviere, it's always great to see you. It's always great to be back at the best school in the world.
Yes, right? It is. And I think what's so great about your story, Sam, and what's so unique for our listeners is they feel like they know you because you have such an incredible presence. But today they're really going to get a chance to understand like how you got here. And I think that's what's so fascinating for people.
Yeah, that means a lot. It's always fun to sit down and kind of talk a little bit more in depth. With the videos I do, I'm trying to focus on highlights and showing some action and keeping the viewer's attention. But this is just kind of laid back. Let's talk and relive some fun, exciting, stories from the Academy and beyond.
Yes, this is about you now. So you get to be the spotlight, and I'm really excited to take everyone on this journey. So let's roll it back a little bit. We'll start with the journey of Sam as a little boy. I know you shared you kind of grew up in Dallas after third grade. We had a little bit of a chat, but you did some bouncing around before that. Let me hear about your childhood.
Yeah, so my dad, 89 grad, like you said, went off to pilot training, ended up flying KC-135s. So I was actually born at McConnell Air Force Base, right? And so Wichita, Kansas. Fun fact, little full circle moment for me. I'm going to be headed out there in 2 weeks to do a KC-46 video with the unit there. And first time I'll have been back since I was born. So that would be really fun to see. But yeah, growing up, I don't consider myself an Air Force brat because my dad did separate when I was young, but we bounced around every 2 years, Altus, Dias, McConnell. It was fun. I definitely have some early memories of him in his flight suit walking out on the flight line, and that probably sparked the initial interest in wanting to serve. And I think I shoved that to a side for a little bit until I was a bit more mature and could realize what that actually meant. Kind of around the time, like I said, I was second or third grade. He got out, transitioned to the airline world, settled on American Airlines, moved to Dallas, Texas. And that's really where I call my home, right? That's where I grew up. And as you know, Dallas is a super, not just for Academy athletes and future cadets. It's just seems like it's like a hot hub, right? For a lot of people moving there. So I had a great experience. When it came time to applying to the Academy, I knew I was going to have my ducks in a line because it's competitive. There's a lot of people trying to get in. But hey, looking back, I mean, I've been all over the world now at this point, but Texas always feels like home.
I love that. You kind of have your roots. And so talk about what you were like as a kid. Were you really active in sports? Were you in, you kind of have the social media side. So were you really interested in some of the, the drama, arts? Like, tell me about what that looked like.
Yeah, sports were always a big part of my family. My dad was actually a basketball player here at the Air Force Academy. My uncle played on the football team as well. So they were huge athletes. I was always, growing up, I was playing tennis, basketball, golf with my dad, my brothers. I have 2 other brothers as well. We were all super competitive. Probably, I think what also helped me just realize the academy was a great school because, what other college are you going to where everyone's so competitive and athletic and sports are built into the curriculum? So yeah, I mean, I would say, that was an important part of growing up. My dad especially instilled a lot of values he learned at the academy in serving. And it's just so cool looking back now because I didn't realize at the time what those were. And then, you go through 4 years here, you go through 5 years active duty and you're like, okay, that's why he was the way that he was. Okay, that was so funny. When I was actually here at the academy, I had like this mental checklist of like stories he told me. And I would try to like check them off as I also accomplished them. So, his basic training experience, right? Him jumping off the 10-meter board in water survival, him going through survival training and getting some of that experience, him jumping out of an airplane. It was like really fun for me to experience those as well, because those were the stories I heard growing up back home in Texas.
Wow. So a house of 3 boys.
Yeah.
Where were you in the lineup?
I was a middle child.
You're the middle child. Okay.
Yep.
And so did your other brothers want to go to the academy as well, or that wasn't?
So my older brother, Ben, he originally was interested. In fact, he's only a year and a half older. So we were only 1 grade apart. And I remember he went to one of those like service academy, congressional, just learn more about it. Right. Mm-hmm. And he went with a couple of his buddies. And I think they turned him off from it because they came back and they're like, oh, I ain't doing that. We're going to Texas A&M. We're going to have fun. But I remember he came back and they had like this pamphlet he got from it. And I like kind of stole it from his bedroom. And then I started looking at it and I was like, okay, if he's not going to do that, I think this is something I want to do. And we can talk more about that, obviously. But my brother did end up going a different route. He went to Texas A&M, not in the Corps either, just kind of a normal student. Little brother, he's like 7 years younger than me. He was always interested in kind of the academies, but just as he kind of grew up, I think he navigated a little bit more towards kind of another route as well. So to answer your question, I was the only one who ended up going to academy and serving, but they're still incredibly close to me. And I actually have this hilarious photo of my older brother. He came to visit during Parents Weekend when I was like a junior. And during Parents Weekend here at the academy, my family would actually like stay at the academy because all the other kids and their parents would go to Boulder or go to Garden of the Gods or the Broadmoor or whatever. And so the academy was completely empty.
Right.
And so it was kind of like this country club for my family. So like we would go down to
I don't know if anyone online would think
that.
About the academy as a country
take
club.
Everyone out of here, and then you got like the golf course to yourself. You got these beautiful greens.
I could see
you've got
the stretch view maybe.
So, right, exactly. So we would go down to like the athletic facilities and play tennis and like just like hang out and have fun. And anyway, there's this funny photo of my older brother. I gave him like my PT uniform, like the ringer tee and the shorts, and he like blended in as a cadet for the weekend. And it was really funny one day because like retreat played and he was like saluting because I'm like, well, they're going to think you're a cadet. You got to. And anyway, so everyone's super close to me in the academy and just they loved coming to visit. And I think in an alternate world, they would have all tried to come here too. But yeah, very close with the family.
That is outstanding. I think we love hearing about the dynamics of kind of what your support network was like, what those influencers were like in your life. You mentioned something about your dad sharing stories. What were those initial nuggets? I know you talked about the experiences he had, but what was he instilling with you and your brothers at that time when you're in those impressionable years?
Well, my dad is just one of the most like regimented, individuals I know. Like he's very, very focused, and now looking back, I think I just attribute so much from the academy and especially back in the 80s, the way things were ran and like how he did it. But you don't know that when you're a kid, right? Like I heard the stories of the academy and I don't know. I think when I was young, I didn't think they were cool. And then as you get a little older, they are kind of cool, but you don't want to like tell him they're cool. So you kind of like shove that in the back of your head. And then now I'm like, wow, that was really, really cool. So yeah, I remember there was this photo we had in our house. I don't know if it was like above our piano or just on some dresser. And it was him in pilot training in his flight suit, standing next to a T-38. And like, I thought that was the coolest thing growing up. I mean, he looked like Tom Cruise from Top Gun.
Right.
And so I like literally to go to my room, I would walk past that every single day. And like that photo is just like, I don't know, it's like cemented in my mind of like, wow, that was so cool. And, at the time I did think, hey, I'm going to be a pilot. I'm going to do this. And, learned obviously down the road, there's so many opportunities to serve in the Air Force. But yeah, I mean, it was just such a cool thing to be able to say, my dad went to the academy. My dad's a pilot, other people's parents, whatever they did, still interesting. But to be able to say that was always so cool. I think I just wanted to be able to experience that, wanted to be able to do something different from my friends in high school, being able to have my dad actually, which I know a lot of applicants don't have someone who served. I'm trying to change that with the work I do to make everyone feel like they understand what they're getting into. But that was huge for me. And it was fun. I still remember I would text him through every milestone we had at the academy, whether it was recognition or ring dance or, commitment. And, he would kind of share where he was back then or a photo he had. And yeah, it was cool.
That's really beautiful. And it makes me think about how we capture now. And I think this was happening during your class as well, but we had the web guy team actually capturing moments. And so it's probably neat that he could actually see some of those while you're texting him. And those listening, the texting ability is not something we had back in the day when I was there. We just had the red phone booth to call home.
But you told me about that. Everyone lining up to try to get your like 5 minutes to call home. I can't imagine that. That's crazy.
It's wonderful. I think that we preserve so much of the experience for our cadets, but there's still a bit now where the family almost gets to feel a little bit of that experience with you. So.
Well, are they still writing like letters home in basic? Is
that
still a huge thing?
They still have a period.
Cool to be able to like do that.
We still pen to paper and stamp and mail.
Yeah.
So yes.
Well, web guy I think was my mom's like saving grace doing basic. As many moms out there.
Yes.
So shout out, Mom. I know you liked web guy, and
love that.
I'd always try to smile when I saw a camera, so she knew I was doing
I could see you doing that.
Even though I sometimes was not, but I was like, yeah.
So let's talk about life at the academy. So you were direct entry. Were you an intercollegiate recruit or just kind of in and started your academy career?
I was direct entry. I was very, very fortunate to get the principal nomination from my congressman who did that method out of Dallas. It was, an incredibly competitive area. I mean, there were like 60 kids just from my area trying to get in. And oh man, I was so stressed going into it because I knew how bad I wanted it. I knew I looked great on paper, but the problem was 60 other kids also look really good on paper. So the interview really helped me out there. I was able to talk about family experiences, got the principal nomination. So I knew I was going to have my shot. And so direct entry, got here. And it's kind of funny because having a dad and an uncle who went here, like I thought I knew everything, right? I had probably watched every single video, read every article, looked at everything on the academy. I was obsessed. The second I got here, day one or day zero, as they call it, like the bus ride here, I was like,
yes, tell me about your experience on the bus.
I was like, oh man, this is a lot different. Well, the bus is fun. I mean, I knew what was coming. I'd seen every single video, but it hits you different when you're there and they're screaming in your face. The footprints was really rough for me though. I've told this story before because, at least then, I don't know what they do now, but they broke it up by your basic flights and your squadron. So Cobras is what I was in. And so all of my future flight members were with me. So we're on the footprints and, I had an upperclassman. There's a crazy photo. I can send it to you guys, but of just someone screaming at me. Right. And I don't know what happened, but I think they lost track of me. So once that footprints win and the rest of my squadron was sent up the ramp to begin their in-processing, I got sent to the back of the footprints line to kind of do it again.
Really?
Yeah. And so they did that for a few cadets, I don't know, who didn't.
You were smiling too much, that's why.
Exactly. That's exactly what it was, Naviere, to be honest. So I got sent to do it again. And the crazy part is I went through that, and Naviere, I got sent a third time.
You were still smiling too much.
Exactly. And this is like the whole footprints spiel again,
wow.
The whole get out of tension. So I had like triple the footprints experience. And then for the rest of the day, because my squadron had already in process, I was so far behind. I was now like, are you lost basic? Like I was that guy the whole time in the morning. So it's just like, and then when I finally got there at the end of the day, like to my squadron, I was already known and had the reputation of being like the lost basic who didn't know who he was. So for the next 6 weeks, which turned into the next year, I was trying to get rid of that reputation that I was the lost basic. But hopefully now I've, gotten rid of that. But that was,
I could keep that call sign for you if you'd like.
Anything but that,
let it
that's
go.
giving me PTSD. Yeah, let's not.
Okay, all right. We'll leave that one alone. That's a fantastic story though. Wow. All right, so let's talk about your life at the Academy. I know where you graduated from, Squadron 28, Legacy Squadron, but let's talk about some of your experiences, both from, the cadet perspective, athletics, academics, wherever you'd like to take us, but also let's weave in a little bit of some lessons you've learned about yourself during that time in leadership.
Yeah, so I started out in CS14, Baby Cobra. I don't know. I think now they're doing like 1 and then 3 or
now
switching.
It's 1 and 3.
Yeah.
Yes.
So
were you 2 and 2?
I was 2 and 2 back then. And the legacy program was really cool. I don't know if they're still doing that, but I always knew that's what I wanted to do because like literally even when I was growing up, my dad had his A jacket and I saw the Blackbirds patch and that was really cool. But yeah, my first 2 years were definitely different from my last 2 years. I always tell people the first 2 years I was discovering who I was, both as a person, but as a cadet, right? Like you come in thinking you're going to do something and have a path and major in this and do this when you graduate. But it was so much information coming at me of here's what you can do. Here are all the opportunities. And I that's one thing I'm really proud of myself for, that I didn't feel like I had to follow a certain path. When I came in, I thought I was going to fly. I was going to be an engineer. I'm going to do this. And that's amazing for all the cadets who want to do that and are excited about it. But I knew I was excited about other stuff too. You mentioned kind of social media, photography, that sort of stuff. Right. I had that kind of in the back of my head. I just had to figure out a way how to make that work in the Air Force, right? Because I had no idea when I came in that was something you could kind of do. So the first years were a lot of discovery, right? I did not, and this was kind of strategically, do any clubs or anything the first 2 years. I kind of regret that looking back, but I thought I just needed to be in the squadron with my, flight with whatever. Versus now I always encourage people at the Academy, take advantage of the clubs, take advantage of the extracurricular stuff, because that, you've formed so many friendships there. Right. I don't know if you agree, or because you did a lot, right?
I definitely agree. I was not a recruited athlete. And so I think I explored a lot of different lanes. But, one of the things that when you were talking, I was thinking about this because when people see you and hear you now, you just have so much confidence. Did you always have that? Or is there a time when maybe that was not the case as a cadet?
Yeah. In high school, I definitely, you know how it goes, right? You're at the top of the top in high school, especially someone going to the Academy. To go to the Academy, most students are presidents of their classes or whatever. And so you kind of go from the top and then you're dropped very quickly and humbled when you get to the Academy. So I think I definitely lost a little bit of that, but then I built it back up. And I think that's kind of the goal of the Academy, right? They're trying to build back up leaders. You start as a follower. So by the time I left, and we can get to that, I was a squadron commander of CS-28, and that is, to this day, one of the most rewarding experiences. I learned the most about myself, and talk about confidence, getting up there every morning, talking to over 100 of your peers as their quote unquote cadet leader. That right there, to this day, I'm like, if I can do that and be able to tell other students my age what they kind of have to be doing, I can do anything.
Peer leadership is definitely one of the most challenging types of leadership.
It is.
Yeah. What did you learn about yourself in that? Can you share a story where you're like, wow, am I really cut out for this? Or
Well, it's hard because you have all different types of cadets, all different types of classes. Everyone has their thing that interests them. And let's be real. You're a peer, right? You're not in the real Air Force yet. You've been appointed this position. And so some cadets are like, okay, come on. Literally 2 weeks ago, he was just, Sam. And now he's like, oh, cadet first class, Eckholm, squadron commander, cadet lieutenant colonel. So it's like, with the younger classes, it's easier because like the rank structure, they kind of understand. But like 2-year senior class, it's kind of like your peers. So my mentality for that is that I was just going to try to be someone that everyone could relate to, that had everyone's best interest in mind. So I would take so long for any decision or working with my AOC, just trying to advocate for what everyone wanted. I didn't see myself as higher, better, above anyone. It was just, I'm going to be the spokesperson for everyone, and I'm going to work as hard as I can to make sure everyone's happy. And I think there's a lot of lessons you can take from that approach. Of course, not every leadership position you have the ability to do that, but at the Academy, I don't know. I think that was just a really cool opportunity to kind of explore and find out how that works. And I learned a lot from that. And as I've had opportunities to lead in my Air Force career and beyond, it's like things I still pull from those experiences. And I'm like, well, this worked then, so maybe it'll work here. But yeah, I don't know. Did you have any opportunities to kind of do the leadership like stuff at the higher level here? It's so unique. There's nothing else like that.
No, it really is unique. And I think one of the things that, when our listeners are always looking for those like little nuggets. Yeah. So you learned so much, maybe what is one takeaway from a pure leadership perspective that you could say I've leaned back into multiple times, what would that be?
Putting yourself in other people's shoes is big. It's kind of hard to remember that because you're getting information when you're a leader, usually from your leader, right? Your boss.
Right.
They're telling you one thing. It's hard for them to see kind of 2 layers down how that's going to impact everyone else. So, I mean, I would always just try to put myself in other people's shoes. Okay, if I do this, how's that gonna make this person feel? But the other thing is you can never make everyone happy. And I had to come to grips with that. And that's hard for me because I'm the type of person that I get really, it like messes me up if I know someone's mad at me or upset or like, doesn't think I'm doing the right thing. But you learn real quickly. You grow up really quickly and realize that, okay, if 90% is good, I mean, that might be the
99%?
best. That might be the best you can get. 90, 99, whatever number you want to throw.
I'm teasing you.
Sometimes it's 50, Naviere, and I'm like, well, this is working. You can't make everyone happy.
Right.
And I still struggle with that because you want everyone to be happy, especially with what I'm doing now on social media when there's millions of people watching what I'm doing. And you look at comments and you're kind of like, man, I tried so hard on this and I could have done it this differently. But then, if you change it for one person, then someone else isn't going to be happy. So thick skin. That's the biggest thing I had to realize, Naviere. You got to I wouldn't be where I am today if I let that bother me. And I remind myself that it's better to be where I am today and have thick skin than be hiding in the corner because I was scared I couldn't make everyone happy. So
that is a great lesson. Thank you for sharing that. So Academy was great. You had some wonderful leadership experiences. Can you share maybe one of your favorite things about the Academy while you're a cadet before we go into life after
well, you
the
asked
Academy?
about clubs earlier, and I wanted to, because I mentioned I didn't do anything really the first years, which is true. That completely changed when I kind of switched squadrons. I got super involved, still within the squadron, but also within the Academy. I was on the mock trial team. That was so fun. Gave me an opportunity to travel on the weekends. I ended up being a legal studies major because of that and really enjoyed just everything that came from that. I love talking and like...
You do?
I do. I don't know if you knew that. I love speaking, right? And talking with other people, communicating. And in mock trial and in legal studies, like our exams were literally us standing at a podium delivering like a fake, appellate speech or like you're talking to a judge. And that was like really cool. And then being able to like compete and travel by like talking and being like a lawyer, it was like fun. And then I also had the opportunity to be on the women's basketball practice team, like the scout team. So I was a basketball player in high school, not at the level to play at the Academy. But I was like, well, how can I continue doing this? And so one of my classmates was like, well, the women's team, they look for, former high school players to come and be the scout team, run their upcoming opponents' defenses and offenses and play against them. And I tried out for that and made it. And that was such a blast.
I never knew we do that.
Yeah, you do that.
That's amazing.
It's amazing. And I had an icy schedule. I was able to go down there. We got the merch, the swag bag. It was fun. So I tell everyone, I was like, yeah, I was on the women's basketball team. So I'm kind of laughing. I'm like, but it was the most amazing opportunity I had. And there's so many things like that at the Academy. By the time I was a firstie, this is kind of, people ask if I had any experience with photography, video, social media while here. One answer I say is I started the CS28 Blackbirds Instagram account, which is still running strong right now. But then I actually worked with my then physics instructor to start like a photography class for the Academy. So it was part of the fine arts department. It was the first time it was ran, and it was an elective I was able to sign up for when I was a firstie. And we literally had like 30 cadets take this course and raised enough money that we were able to get everyone a camera. And our professor, Colonel Maddox at the time, I don't know if she's still in, but she was amazing. She like taught us and instructed us because she had like her own business doing wedding photography and stuff like that. And that was so cool. I remember going to class, walking, and it felt like I was like at a normal school. I was taking a photography class. And so that kind of was when I was graduating, going into public affairs as my career, realized that I'm going to keep this up. And it was just cool to be able to kind of do something like that you don't think the Academy has, but no, we've got some cool classes that, you might not expect.
No, that's wonderful. And I think our listeners are really excited to hear that too. And before we go on to kind of your career in the Air Force and that transition, I wanted to go back to kind of a little bit about the intercollegiate experience, because I think you have a really unique perspective, right? You are a not recruited athlete, but so you experienced really diving into the Academy from that aspect. And then you got to have the schedule of and understand the rigors of what our intercollegiate athletes experience. And, we hear this term Terrazzo gap.
Yeah.
What's your perspective on that? For people that are just listening, I think that's a fascinating topic that we haven't really explored on this podcast.
Well, as a cadet for the first 2 years, not being an intercollegiate athlete, the TZO gap, as you mentioned, it's a completely different perspective. And I'll be honest, sometimes you buy into it. You're like, these athletes are having it easier. They get to go do this and travel and wear civilian clothes as freshmen with their, team merch and, miss all the mandatory squadron events and the training sessions. And so I'll be honest, you do have some of that perception. Now, flashing forward, that completely changed when I got a taste of it. And this was a small taste of it. I was a scout team player and it wasn't every day I had to go down. It was kind of half the week because we had like 2 different teams that did it. But even then, I was like, I can't imagine what they have to go through. Because you go down there, your schedule's modified to where you don't have afternoon classes. So after lunch, you're kind of going down there. And then it is practice, meetings, dinner, sometimes meetings again, and then homework, and then rinse and repeat. And at the same time, sure, maybe they're missing some squadron stuff, but you know what they're not missing? Anything academically. That's the same. So I have so much appreciation for all of the intercollegiate athletes at the academy, and experiencing that gave me more of an appreciation. And I just, again, it's something you can't fully appreciate until you have done it yourself. But for those students that can be so successful on the field, on the court, and then still graduate from this, I know I couldn't do it. I know I couldn't do it. So to answer your question, it is something that I think people who aren't aware or who are listening and, might have that perception that it exists, I think we need to work to change that a little bit, because these people are incredible. And again, it's just, you can probably share more as someone that went through that. Like it's fascinating how they do that.
I really appreciate you sharing that, because I think that's a wonderful thing for people to hear, some of the perceptions versus realities. And so thank you for sharing that. So let's talk about when you were in the military. So you graduated the academy. What AFSC did you get?
Yeah. So public affairs.
Yes.
35 P1. When I was a firstie, I kind of knew I was going to not do the pilot thing. Multiple reasons. People ask me why. I wasn't even fully medically qualified at the time. I had some color vision stuff. Probably could have got a waiver for that eventually, but there was a long process. So that's where I first started to think, hey, maybe there's something else I can do. 2, I just loved being on the ground, talking to people. Like there was more I wanted to do than just fly. And so I was trying to find a career field that allowed me to still be around aircraft, still be beep bopping, buzzing around and doing my thing, but also having an impact. So after my sophomore year, when we went on Ops Air Force, I went to Travis Air Force Base, and part of that trip, I got to shadow the public affairs career field. And while I was there, I still remember the feeling of like walking through the doors at the PA building, which was right by the wing staff, whatever. They had like a full suite of like Apple MacBook computers, airmen like on Lightroom and Photoshop and editing videos. The San Francisco 49ers were in town to do like a base visit, and PA was out there escorting them. I got to interview the commander who was about to PCS and write a story on him. This was all in the span of like 3 days. And I was like, what other career field is there where you can do all of this? It's like kind of the jack of all trades job. And so that visit, I was like, wow, this is really, really cool. I want to do this. Now the next part was like, well, how do I do this? Mm-hmm. So I came to find out there was only like 5 slots. Since I've graduated, I've heard some years they have had no slots, some years they have a couple slots. So I don't really know how it works anymore, but I would go up to Harmon Hall like literally every day the first semester, my first year, second of my 2-degree year. And I would just talk with then at the time, Lieutenant Colonel Alan Heritage, who was the PA director. And I would be like, sir, well, I'd be like, can I learn more about this job? But secretly, I was like, well, how can you help me out? Can you help me get this?
It's all about connections.
It's all about connections. And regardless of whether or not that actually did help, I know 2 things are true. I went up there every day. I talked, and then I also got public affairs. So I worked really hard, though. I worked so hard in school, and I had a good class ranking, and that definitely helped me. And just networking as much as I could to let AFPC know that this is something that I want. So yeah, I dropped public affairs. I was so excited. I remember our squadron put on this awesome AFSC drop release with like Nerf guns and like blindfold maze stuff. And when I saw that, I was like, this is going to be a fun 5 years.
Yes.
Or longer. And it was.
I was going to say, did you know it was going to be 5 years?
No, I didn't. Now looking back, that's why I said that. But
Right.
and we can get into that too, but it's a career field that is fun for life. And, I'm so glad I got it.
Wonderful. So let's talk about that. Let's talk about that career field and some of your experiences, both, from the experience perspective, but maybe where there were some leadership lessons you took as a public affairs officer.
Yeah, well, I was kind of thrust right into it. So I got stationed at Langley Air Force Base. I was, I think, the only one from my class, maybe one other, who even got sent there. So it's not like pilot training where a lot of, if you got your buddies, it's kind of like a little reunion and you kind of run it back for the next couple of years. I was off on my own. So I had to learn quickly like what life was like to be just, Sam as an officer, as a lieutenant. It was like the first week when I was out there, we were doing like unit PT with my PA shop, running around the base track, which those who have been to Langley, it's beautiful right on the coast, running around. It's amazing around the flight line. And out of nowhere, an F-22 took off, like just full burner, but it wasn't a normal takeoff. It started like doing maneuvers and rolls and just putting on this spectacle of a show. I mean, my ears were like, I was like, oh my gosh. And I turned to my boss at the time. I was like, what is going on right now? She's like, oh, Sam, that's the F-22 demo team. They travel to air shows around the world, just like the Thunderbirds, and they put on shows and help recruit. And they actually take one PA person from our office to travel with them each year. And it was at that second I knew, it was like,
ding.
I was like, that's what I want to do. That right there is what I want to do. And, flash forward a few months, the opening came up. I was completely inexperienced at the time, but I pitched myself and sold myself. And the commander at the time, Lieutenant Colonel Loco Lopez, who's now out at Hawaii as the squadron commander for the F-22 unit. He's been a big inspiration to me. I interviewed with him and I was showing him a YouTube channel I'd start. I was like, look, I can edit, see, I can take photos, look at my Instagram. And he hired me. And for the next 2 years, Naviere, I was just like, what is real life? I mean, we were at shows all over the world. I went to Dubai, Singapore, Chile, Hawaii, Alaska, pretty much every base here in the US. Got to meet my classmates who were stationed there, got to run all the social media, do all the videos for the team. The coolest jet in the world, it's the F-22. Blew up their social media, just made it my goal to do what I call no life it. Literally for 2 years, it's all I did was live, breathe F-22 demo team and just really wanted to give it my all. And that was so fun. Now to go back to the leadership side of things, imagine being a butter bar, a second lieutenant, now thrust on a team which has national media level attention. I mean, I would go to, I remember I was at a show in Chicago and I just got called in to do an interview because our pilot wasn't available. And I'm literally just in front of thousands and thousands of people having to just talk about the Air Force mission and these high level questions that I was like, oh my gosh. So back to your question of being confident, that's probably where it came from too. I just had to learn and had to fake it till I made it. But what a fun experience for a young lieutenant and just something I'll never forget. Wow.
Well, I think something I took from what you said as well is you identify very quickly when there's something that you really want to do and you make a path to get there. And I think you're relentless in your pursuit in a way that is really convincing. And I think that's a lesson, right? You have to put in the work. I mean, you obviously can't just only be talk. You have to be able to show you can put some cred behind it. And I think that's a lesson where you're able to share with folks, hey, if you're really interested in something, go all in for it. And to your point, and then live it, right? Breathe it, soak it all in. So I think that's really inspirational. Were there any tough times you had as a public affairs officer?
Tons. PA, it's not always the good side of things too, right? We really exist for the most part for the crisis communication, right? Where when something bad happens, to communicate that as well. And so it doesn't matter if it's the highs or the lows, you still got to get out there and talk to people and make things happen. So, luckily when I was kind of on the team, we didn't have anything catastrophic, any mishaps like that, but I know people who have, right? I mean, I had mentors, the PA world, who were former Thunderbird PAs when they've had crashes. And I mean, there's a lot that goes on there. So you always have to be prepared for that. And even though I didn't have to necessarily be thrust in that environment, that's still on your mind and you still have to be prepared. Now, the other thing was just tough with being in this lifestyle for 2 years is that one, you're constantly gone. So we were TDY, I mean, like literally 300 days a year. And so it's hard to continue to have the same motivation every single day when it's just the same show, monotonous, like doing everything day in and day out. And I think that's a lesson anyone can learn in the Air Force or beyond, you know, because a lot of the times it is repetitive. So I would always look for ways to make it not repetitive. And for me, if we're going to a different show, I mean, like as a photographer, videographer, making content, like I would always try to do something different. I would always try to focus in on a different element of the story. So instead of just focusing on the pilot and the jet every time, I would tell behind the scenes stories of our maintainers, of our aircrew flight equipment specialists, of the fans who came and traveled across the country to watch and, you know, doing tours with them. And, you know, I would arrange a ton of school visits and talk to Civil Air Patrol units and JROTC and really just focus on the community relations and the recruiting side of things. And there's a lot I had to work with, and that was really fun for me to kind of mix and match. And that was the way I just stayed motivated and, you know, still had fun with it. And even to this day, I'm always trying to one up the last thing I did and branch out and evolve and just make everything interesting. And I think the viewers too now kind of understand that and appreciate it. And that's always my goal, is for no one to like ever click on a video of mine or see what I'm doing and be like, oh, that's kind of the same thing. I want it to always be exciting.
I can absolutely appreciate that. And it seems like that kind of pace is, I mean, how do you maintain that? So maybe my question would be for you, Sam, what is your outlet? Because if you live, breathe, as a leader, right? If you expect a lot from your people and you always want the best and you want something new, how do you maintain that level of give? And so what's your outlet?
Yeah, well, kind of the first part of what you asked, I also had to realize that just because I'm this way doesn't mean everyone's this way, right? So if you're a leader and you are 100% committed and want it to be your entire life, that doesn't mean everyone's going to be that way. And I had to realize that, because at times that can be frustrating. If you're leading a team and you're gung-ho about it, but like, okay, maybe they aren't. Well, that's okay. You know, you need to, again, put yourself in their shoes and see what motivates them. And, you know, I learned that lesson as well. Even back to when I was a squadron commander, I'd pitch an idea and I was so excited. And then I can tell, well, not everyone's going to be excited as you, Sam. But yeah, my outlet, I mean, a lot of different stuff. At the time, you know, I was just so excited about doing what I was doing. So as weird as it sounds, my outlet was my work. Yeah, and that's kind of something not everyone understands, but I actually felt like depressed if I wasn't like continuing to work, because I knew there was a time limit on how long I would have this opportunity. So I was like, well, I'm going to keep working hard now. Kind of since then, and as I've moved on, I have found like a healthy balance between work and just other things. So, you know, friendships are incredibly important, especially other people in the space with what I'm doing, being able to talk with them and how they are handling stress levels, like, because not everyone can relate, especially to what I was doing and am doing. So other people in kind of the space in the industry, like, we're all dealing with the same things. So that's something I tell people all the time, is find other people who are in your world. Those are some awesome friendships you can have because they understand what you're going through. Not everyone does. That's a classic example of when people talk about the academy. You go home on a winter break, none of your friends understand what you're going through. It's really, really hard. You know who does? Your classmates at the academy. You go through that with them. So relying on that has been a huge thing for me. Just other people who have gone through what I have, like, we're in it together. And those are some of my times when I really feel like I can sit back, relax, and like the stress is taken off.
No, that's really helpful. And I did chuckle in my head a little bit when you said, you know, actually my outlet is my work. But I think when you're doing the thing that you're wired to do and your passion, that makes sense, right?
Yeah.
It's both fulfilling and exhausting, and you
Sure.
can kind of repeat that
Yeah.
and get both ends of everything you need out of it, right?
And, you know, I mean, I love to travel too. Like, I mean, I do normal things as well. But in some way, even then I battle the whole like, well, what could I be doing? Especially when you're a full-time, have your own company, entrepreneur. That was a huge adjustment for me. Because it's not like you have a salary job where there is some end at some point to kind of go home. It's like, well, you could always be doing more, right? You could always be working. And I've had to struggle with that sometimes because it's like, oh, I could keep working. So that's something I've learned and doing better at still to this day. But yeah, I mean, it's interesting.
So let's talk about that transition. You know, you knew there was a time period on that F-22 demo team and the PA role. But when did you know, I think I'm going to be moving out of this into my own kind of work?
Yeah. So once I finished the F-22 team, you know, I had to move on with my career. They don't let you do something in the Air Force forever. Totally understood that. But I wasn't done personally inspiring, making content. I had developed kind of a following along the way of people who were just interested in what I was doing. So I would kind of take my free time. I always made it my goal. I was like, I am going to stay focused on the PA job. I never want anyone to be able to look at Lieutenant Eckholm and be like, he's not locked in on this PA job. He's not focused. He's interested in these other things. So I would make that my goal. But my free time, my leave, my time on the weekends, instead of normal hobbies people do, I would make videos. That was my thing. And so my next assignment, I went to Scott Air Force Base. I was with the 375th Air Mobility Wing, and that was a demanding and fun job. And I kind of still had this thing going on the side. It got up to the point where it was at the end of my academy commitment, and I had a tough decision to make, right? I loved being in the Air Force. I was a captain at the time. I was excited. But as you rank up, you get more responsibilities, understandably. And I knew that I did not want to let that lack. If I was going to stay in the Air Force, I did not want my airmen, I did not want people to think I was distracted doing something else. But I loved this other thing as well. So really what I had to decide is, where am I having the biggest impact in the Air Force? And as weird as it sounds, right? Because you think of serving, most of the time people think like in uniform, active duty. Well, I think of service in many different ways, right? And I actually felt, and I know this is true, that I could serve the Air Force, the military, our country better on the outside, continuing to inspire people by doing these videos, making this content, showing people what life was like, inspiring all these kids on the outside, being able to go at that with 100% of my time. And luckily, that wasn't just a personal decision I made. Like, I was having conversation with like the highest levels of leaders in Air Force recruiting and public affairs, explaining this as well. And that's just kind of what I decided I wanted to do. And it was scary. It's very scary going from a job, one, that I'd worked since I was a freshman in high school to get to in the Air Force, to now kind of giving that up to do this other thing. But what really helped, Naviere, is it wasn't giving it up to me. It was just doing it in a different way. I would say I'm still connected now more than I was even when I'm in with what I'm doing. I'm not in uniform, I don't have my cat card anymore, but I am serving more than I ever thought I would be, around the units, traveling to bases every single week, filming what I'm doing. So that's kind of what helped me make that decision. And it was the right decision. And to this day, I mean, the comments I see from kids, the people I've been able to help and resonate with, it is crazy. And it's something that probably wouldn't have been able to happen if I stayed in, just with the amount of, stuff I would have had to do on the normal job side. So.
Right. Wow. So you talked about impact, and that was really important to you. What's one of yours, or maybe a couple of your most favorite impactful moments that you've had since moving into the entrepreneurial side of things?
Yeah, I mean, it's hard sometimes when you're like a video creator, because what you see is numbers on a screen, right? You see views, you see comments, which can be really inspiring too. But sometimes, you miss the in-person interactions because you're traveling and, it's the videos people see. But I always, even to this day, a couple times a year, I do like in-person events. I just went out to an air show and was out there in San Antonio, and I did a couple of these previous years. And it's a different feeling when you're out there and there's tens of dozens of people who are like literally waiting in line just to say hi, to take a photo, or to tell me that like, hey, these videos are the reason they want to join or have joined or have inspired them. It's crazy. And I mean, that to me keeps me going. And that was so impactful. And, I have a folder on my computer, on my phone, of like screenshots of all the messages I've gotten, because when I'm like, I don't know, having a hard day, or like when I'm like, man, this is tough, I can look back at those and be like, well, this is why it's all worth it. And this is why I do the things that I do. And yeah, I mean, it's cool being a creator who's not just in it for themselves. And I try to tell people that, like, really what I'm doing is to inspire other people. It's tough. I mean, it probably looks really cool when you see all the things I'm doing, and that is fun, but it is a lot. But I know the impact that's possible. I remember when I was a freshman in high school looking for content online, and there wasn't too much of it, and I wanted to change that. And I know, Naviere, we've worked so much together, and you've seen the stuff I've done, and you know how much it means to me. So just being able to see and hear from people, it means everything. Yeah. So
is there a story, a video that you've done that it just kind of sits right near your heart? Like, this one is just so special. I mean, you probably have so many, but is there one that you just feel has really resonated with, youth, or just that level of impact? Is there one that you can speak to?
Yeah. Well, I'll give kind of two. So one, that is incredibly special to me in a personal way. I actually got to go back and do a video on the KC-135, and I brought my dad out there for that. I
might have seen
that was something I always wanted to do. And he's great. I was a little nervous. I was like, how is he going to be on camera? But he like knocked it out of the park to the point where like some comments were like, he needs to come to every video. I'm like, Dad, you just need to take over the channel at this point. Everyone loves you so much. But it was so fun. I mean, he studied for weeks, like on the facts of the aircraft. I mean, so he was an instructor for the instructors at the schoolhouse. So it took him a few minutes, but like literally after half an hour, he knew his way around that aircraft so well and was teaching the current pilots out there some things that they didn't know. Anyway, so I look back at that video as like a full circle moment for me. And that resonated with a lot of people too, who just enjoyed seeing my inspiration. And now some people who look at me as their inspiration, like it's just really, really cool to see. Outside of that, I mean, I would say a really personal project of mine was when I actually got to come out here to the academy and do a complete tour of the grounds and the campus and facilities. With the audience I've been able to build, a lot of people know me as an academy grad. And so they reach out asking me questions about the Air Force Academy, what it's like to apply, how they can get in. And it's hard to answer all of those questions because that's all I'd be doing if I did it. So I was like, well, what's a way I can like put this message out to everyone? And so, you know, I worked with your team, worked with the academy team, and we came out here for a week and filmed what I think is the most beautiful school ever. And I just wanted to show that. And that video to this day is like, I don't know, 1.2 something million views. And you go scroll through those comments, the amount of people who didn't know it exists, which probably sounds crazy to us, right?
Right. That
now know and can see all of these cool things you would have access to and can do if you're a cadet. I mean, I think that video is going to have returns and just inspire people for years to come. And so that was such a big project I wanted to do, to get back to my school and to show other people like this school did this for me. Like you guys need to understand what it can do for you too. So I'm really proud of that one. And I mean, have a lot of people reaching out to me about that still to this day. I mean, every single week about, you know, hey, Sam, I want to go here. I watched this video. Like, how can I do it? And I'm like, all right, well, let's talk. Here's what you need to start doing. You need to do this.
I love that. So it's really unique, I think your journey, right? Because you have been a leader of peers, of people, of airmen, et cetera. You've also been, I think, a leader of yourself and, you know, and part of how you navigate that. One of the ways I think our listeners really feel connected with our guests is, you know, life is not always pretty and perfect. What are some challenges you've experienced along the way in your, like, just in your professional and personal life that you have felt has evolved you as an influencer, as a leader, as someone who inspires? Can you share any with the group that makes them feel like, okay, Sam's human. He's, you know, I'm kind of like Sam, you know, in some way. What would that be?
Yeah, I mean, like I said, it's one of the things I sometimes struggle with when you have an online presence is you kind of gravitate towards only showing the highlights. And that's just kind of how the business works, right? I mean, you know, I don't want to be putting out negative content all day. But then, you know, you're right. I mean, some people kind of see like, oh, like Sam, everything seems to be going well. I mean, that's not the case. Absolutely not. Especially with what I was doing. I mean, there's a reason it's very hard to get into this space, especially being in the Air Force. You know, I made some decisions that some might have said would kind of hurt my career, right? Even going back to the demo team, that was a job that typically you don't do as a lieutenant, right? And I was told, hey, this might hurt your career going forward. But I also knew that this was something I wanted to do, and I had goals in mind, and I knew I was young, and I just hated the idea that a decision I made when I was 23 years old would ruin my career. I was like, there's no way that can be true. Like, I'm so young. I've got so much opportunity. And so I'm glad I kind of listened to myself, and that was a big, you know, decision. But even along the way, like making videos while being in the Air Force, I kind of was writing the rules because like there weren't regulations for what you can and can't do. And I was having a lot of tough conversations with people. I'm like, I am trying to do the right thing here. Like, you guys got to help me. I see a lot of potential in this. So that kind of lesson can be applied to, I think, anyone. Like, a lot of people I feel like want to do certain things or have dreams and goals, and either one, get talked out of it, two, talk themselves out of it, three, you just look at the negatives and it gets in your head and it makes it hard for people to kind of pull the trigger and do it. And I completely understand that. Comfortable rut is what I kind of use that phrase, is like you get comfortable in things and it's hard to break away from that. And so I don't know, for me, I mean, that's the biggest advice I give people is like, just if you have an end goal in mind, it's not going to be easy to get there. If it was easy, everyone would be doing it, right? I mean, especially being an entrepreneur, like it's hard. It's a gamble. It's a risk. And you got to prepare yourself. I never say like, hey, just go take this without any plan or backup plan. And I always had that in place. But, I guess I kind of am a risk taker in some world. And I know I have good intentions at heart and I know what I'm trying to do. And I think that was really important, is just having the backup plans, having a good background, having like things set in place to where I'm able to kind of do this. And then always just, I don't know, coming across as a good person has been huge. So people like, hopefully they watch my stuff and like, Sam's good. He's doing the right thing. So I don't know. It's hard. I mean, I don't know if you have any specific advice on that either, because you've done so much, but like, I don't know, when people look at you, or I don't know, when you look at my stuff, hopefully you can kind of resonate and don't think it's all like good all the time. But
no,
yeah,
I think you come across as very approachable.
Yeah.
And I think it's lovely for them to hear in your own words, that some of the struggles that you have when you're thinking about your content, when you're thinking about the delivery of it, they maybe don't get that glimpse normally, right? They just see the final product. And so I think it's good for listeners to hear that you've kind of had to, advocate for yourself,
exactly,
trust in yourself. And I think you've shown a path of what belief and grit and, always just, going back to your core of my intention is to create meaningful impact and do great things for our Air Force and for the future leaders, right? I mean, I think you can always hang your head on that with pride. So.
Yeah. And I always tell people like, what you see as a finished polished video, like the behind the scenes is crazy. It's like cameras everywhere, months and months of coordination for these shots and for these approvals. I mean, we plan videos like I'm planning them now that you will see 6 months from now. That's how long it takes. And things changed when I first started out, and it was fun. It was a hobby. It was just what I was doing. And then now when it becomes like a full-time job and you have a team now, I've got employees who rely on me, like things kind of change with that. And, definitely the advocating for yourself is something that it's sometimes hard to do. But it's necessary. And so, there's a lot of lessons I've learned and I'm still learning. But I'm not going anywhere. I'm going to keep going hard. So
love that. So your dad and uncle were inspirations to kind of get you into the profession of arms, the Air Force Academy. Who inspires you now? Do you listen to any particular leaders? Are there books you read? When you have time, what kind of fills your inspiration bucket, Sam?
Yeah. As crazy as it sounds, there's not necessarily like a one specific person who inspires me. And that's just because I try to consume so much different stuff and take the best from all of those. So I'm constantly learning, right? If I'm not creating content, I'm watching other content for inspiration, listening to a ton of podcasts like this one here. There's so much we can take from different people and different leaders. It is hard a little bit in my case to find someone who's exactly done what I've done, but there's a lot of people who have done other things and kind of made it, like Colonel Kim Campbell. I've been listening to her actually, and like what she's been doing with her Air Force career, and then afterward, and like I've actually never met her, but you feel like you've met her, right? I feel like I've met her with what she does, and so like I actually try to, resonate with that as well. Same thing with Michelle Curran Mace. She's not an Academy grad, but she's all over the world, and we did similar things in our careers, and so she's been awesome to just kind of talk to as well. Pretty much any Academy grad, and that's something that I really enjoy being a member of the Long Blue Line, is like we come from the same roots and everyone's like very intelligent and understands things. And I've just been able to have so much support with what I've been doing through the grad network, especially when I go out to different bases and units. Like grads are like, hey, Sam, what's up? Like, I'd love to work with you. And that's been really cool. So a ton of different inspiration from a lot of different people. And hopefully I can eventually be that inspiration for someone else who wants to do something similar to what I'm doing too. Yeah.
Yeah. That's exciting to draw inspiration. I think not even just from people, but experiences and what you see. You're constantly looking for those kind of pieces. That's pretty special. So, let's talk about right now. What is, how are you in support of the Academy through what you're doing? Maybe kind of share with our listeners what that looks like.
Yeah. So, I'm always trying to further the Academy mission with like literally every video I produce. I'm always doing something else. So I had the awesome opportunity to partner with Air Force Recruiting, and we did a 6-video series exploring different aircraft, different career fields. One of my favorite videos we did is I actually went down and experienced Air Force Special Tactics Officer training for a week in Hurlburt. And I was literally hands and feet behind my back, bobbing through the pool, like going through selection that normal people train for years for. Had like a week of advance to go out there and do that. So I try to put myself in uncomfortable situations to show other people like what that's like.
It looked kind of brutal.
It was extremely brutal. And I think there's more of that coming down the road as well. As you know, one of the huge goals was to give back to people trying to go to the academy and honestly level the playing field in my mind with people who maybe don't have graduates or parents who went to the academy, and worked extremely hard, worked with you guys on the Air Force Academy Blueprint program to just have a resource out there where anyone can navigate the academy application, can know what they need to be doing in high school, and to know what to expect once they actually get to the academy too. And that's been incredibly successful. I mean, we have over 300 students enrolled, over 24 who've been accepted this past class.
I was going to ask, have you seen any of those come through?
Yeah, we have. Well, this will be the first year, so they haven't entered yet because we launched last August.
Right.
And so yeah, I'm just excited. It'll be a little mafia of like Blueprint students kind of up here at the academy as well. And like I said, that was something, it's like, you get so many messages about it, and it's hard because I want to answer every single one. But if I did that, there would be nothing else I would do. It'd be a full-time job kind of just responding to these comments. So that was a way I was like, here guys, like this is everything I know, and I've researched and worked with you guys on and a lot of industry professionals to learn about the academy and kind of put that out there. So anyone listening, academyblueprint.com, you can check that out. And that's just been a big passion project of mine. And then going forward, like I said, I'm not going anywhere. We're constantly filming with different units, career fields, bases, even expanding into some other branches too, because, I don't want to just be biased towards the Air Force, as awesome as it is. I think people can have a better appreciation of the Air Force if they understand other branches too. So that's been fun for me and got some exciting things going forward. But anything the academy needs, you guys need, I'm always here. I look back at USAFA with just all love in the heart. Yeah.
I love that. So one of the things we like to do is just make sure we leave our listeners with, kind of they had to boil it down, our time together, Sam. What are the things that you want to leave them with? And then we'll kind of close it out with how they can get in touch with you.
Absolutely. What I want to leave them with, I don't know. I look at what I did, right? And I try to think like, how can other people kind of follow their passions and their dreams? And we've already hit on some of it, but biggest thing for me is like, don't lose sight of that end goal. I know so many people who want to do something and kind of get discouraged and then end up, not pursuing that. And sometimes like, I understand, but other times I'm like, if it was just like one small decision you could have made, you could have gotten there. And it's tough. And so, yeah, dig deep down and realize what you want and just relentlessly go after that. The amount of people who I think go after something with everything they've got and don't achieve it is actually small. It's the people who kind of psych themselves out. And I look back, one decision could have changed everything for me. I could have decided or listened to that one person who's like, Sam, you don't want to do the demo team. That will ruin your career. And I wouldn't be where I am today, or, vice versa. So that's been important for me, is just go after it with everything you've got if you've won it. To anyone interested or parents who want to go to the academy, let's start there. Come up with a plan, work hard. It's going to be hard, but you can make it through. Academy is just such a great place and sets you up for life. And I'm so passionate about like passing that message on to as many people as possible. So that's it for me. As far as how they can get in contact, my name's Sam Eckholm across all social media. I'm obviously a little biased, but I think the stuff we're putting out is just so cool. I always just try to show like, what do people want to see? We just recently put out a video on the iconic A-10 Warthog, and we're out there watching a live fire demonstration, went out to Hill with the F-35 unit and got to, interview the pilot and watch that aircraft do what it does best. Got some amazing videos upcoming in the pipeline. And I always want to hear what people want to hear too. Naviere, do you want to see anything in particular?
Oh, gosh.
What's on your list?
Wow. That
puts you on the spot.
Way to put me on the spot.
Yeah.
No, honestly, I think it's interesting. I think when you put videos out, I'm like, oh, I would not have thought about it. I'm so glad that you put that. Yeah. So I think that's actually what you're going for.
That is what I'm going for. It's like the interesting things not everyone is aware of. And even if they are, if you watch the video, there's things we'll touch on that you weren't aware of.
You still are like, oh, wow, didn't know that.
Exactly. Yeah. So I was trying to expand, get bigger, do better things, and hopefully continue working with the Academy, the AOG, and full circle for me for sure.
Absolutely. Well, those who are listening, you probably can hear the energy in this room that we're able to feel, but it's been an incredible pleasure and honor chatting with you, Sam. I can't wait to see what you put out next. I think the Long Blue Line is just grateful for your continued service and impact, and we look forward for continued partnerships in the future.
Of course. Well, thanks again for having me. Thanks for everyone who tuned in to listen. Look forward to continuing to work with you guys.
Awesome. Thanks. Thank you for joining us for this edition of Long Blue Leadership. The podcast drops every 2 weeks on Tuesdays and is available on all your favorite podcast apps. Send your comments and guest ideas to us at socialmedia@usafa.org and listen to past episodes at longblueleadership.org.